Tick tack, it's my clock telling me I should get up.
Hi, and welcome to The Conscious Loop, where woo-woo and the real world collide. I'm your host, Katrina DeAngelis. Join me as we explore what it looks like to live consciously almost always. Each episode, we dive into transforming mindsets and shifting paradigms through topics such as developing self-awareness, living authentically, communication, strengthening relationships, and leading from the inside out. If you're ready to break out of your unconscious loops and discover what else is possible, you came to the right place. You ready? Let's dive in. Hello, Jennifer. So good to have you here on the show. Before we dive in, I would love for you to share, what you do and the work that you do and how you support leaders. I know you're hot off the press from a workshop that you just did this morning, so I'm excited to be able to dive into some of those concepts and share with the audience as well. But let's start with a little bit about you.
Yeah, thank you. So I have a company called Common Good Coaching, and I am a coach. I typically work with sort of mid-level professionals, and I have a special sweet spot for people who work in the social impact fields, nonprofits, education, and other organizations that are doing good in the world.
Beautiful. And I'm curious, actually, I think that's a unique approach as well with working with impact companies and people who are really trying to do good in the world. I hope that we are all like trying to do good in our own way, but I think it's a unique role also to be in an impact role like that. And so I'm curious, do you notice any differences for leaders that are really, I think there's two things, like one, really trying to connect with impact and serve and lead from that place, and then others who actually might be trying to find that connection to their impact in the roles that they're doing. I feel like those are two really different questions, but I'm sure that there's people here who are in both those categories, both working within impact or also looking to connect more with their impact.
I love that call out. I think my experience has taught me, first of all, that all of us want to make a positive difference in the world. None of us want to end our lives and say, just went through the motions. We want to be able to look back and say, this is how I contributed. And people, in my experience, who make that their profession kind of come to it with a really powerful intention of dedicating their time to it. One of the things that I think is really unique in the nonprofit employee or social impact employee experience is a lot of times, and this is my own story, we get into that work because of our life experiences. Either we want to give something that we didn't have when we were younger and needed help or at a certain key point in our lives, or we had something and we want to give back and have made the conscious effort to really dedicate our time to the pursuit of that impact. There's a flip side or a downside to that I see sometimes that I could talk a little bit about either now or later. And that is the sense of attaching our worthiness to our work.
Yeah.
And that can be a huge pitfall.
Yeah. Wow. That's my mind was already spinning and wanting to ask a question in that direction. So I would actually, I would love to hear more about that, especially for people who, I really resonate with that. Like maybe somebody didn't get something when they were younger. And so now they're like dedicated also to supporting others, or they had that support and now they want to give back. There's definitely this like personal commitment, I think, to a mission and to having that impact, which can be so tied with worthiness, like you said. So what are some ways that people can become aware of that and lead with more impact through almost, I don't know if the right word is like detachment, but I'm hearing like almost like a level of detachment, but commitment, and what are the unconscious loops that happen in that space that might actually prevent people from being their best selves or being able to show up and give their best and also feel their best?
What a powerful question. What's coming up for me is that first we need to acknowledge and feel connected to why we said yes to this work or this pursuit of impact in the first place. So when I'm coaching somebody, I might invite them to consider what's important to you about that. So I have a background in education nonprofits. My story is that I was the first in my family to go to college. The sense of feeling like getting more education, getting farther along than my family did, became this pursuit of if I could do it, I want to help other people do it. And so every role that I took, from tutoring to running after school programs to doing wraparound services in middle and elementary schools, I was thinking if I could just help more students and more children get what I got now, then, but that's the place where we need to investigate. Then what? Then I'll be good enough? Then my life will matter? Then everything I struggled for would be worth it? And so often we're like striving for the thing, that sense of acknowledgement or purpose or validation by pursuing impact. But what we're really looking for is internal. And it's the sense of worthiness or enoughness or sizing our sense of like why I exist in the world, meaning, the sort of the meaning and purpose of our lives. And so I find that the way to move through it is to actually ask yourself the question, what's important to me about this? No, really, what's important to me about this? And what that can do is unhook you or unhook myself. And this is my story from the sort of attachment to perfectionism, the attachment to
Mhm.
achievement, and free you to say, if I believe that I'm already worthy, and if I accept that I'm already good enough, can I make impact in a way that maybe burns me out less or helps me achieve my goals financially, or even just take another path that I don't feel like is rejecting the thing that is important to me?
Yeah. Wow. That's so powerful. I feel like that shift in mindset, because going from outsourcing that validation and to insourcing that is like almost, okay, am I showing up from a place of I need to get to that worthiness, so therefore I'm going to do, versus I am worthy and I'm going to show up from that place of like overflow and abundance. And that's such a shift. And I'm curious, like, how did you go about doing that, and what changed for you when that happened? What did you have to do to make that paradigm shift? And once you did, how you showed up and your how you felt worthy and connected to your mission, like how did that all of that change?
Yeah, it changed dramatically. I'll just say that. So there's a funny sort of thing that's happened in my life where there's people that knew me before coaching, and then there's people that got to know me after. And the people that knew me before, they're like, "Whoa, who is this lady?" Because the Jennifer that was unaware and not conscious about sort of my own motivations was really obnoxious. And it was because I wanted approval. I wanted to be the best. I wanted everyone to know I was the best. I wanted to speak up in every meeting and be like, I have something to say that you didn't say, that you need to hear, that I know, so that everyone knows. And I was that person. And I was incredibly, gifted and talented in my field. And I deserved the expertise, the recognition for my expertise. But there was no humility about it because this was this striving, this urgency to get to that level where I was like, okay, I finally got the thing I was looking for. And when I turned the mirror inward through some good coaching that I received and through learning about coaching, I realized that all of those things that I was looking for, I could give myself. And when I made that shift, people even commented like, "Your tone of voice has changed. Your, like, sort of essence, your presence is different. The way you feel in a room is different." And that changed, honestly, the way that I could make a difference in my work. I was still working in nonprofit at the time, so it changed the way I led my team. It changed the way they interacted with each other. It changed the way they interacted with schools. And I think that sort of reverberation of rejecting the urgency and stepping into abundance, as you said, it had more than a ripple effect. It had like a sonic boom of,
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that story. That's so beautiful, and it's amazing too because I now even I have more context to the work that you do because I imagine that the support that you give coaches in really developing that coaching lens and mindset and sort of framework and how to look at how they show up for themselves and their team and from insourcing that worthiness first are the things that you now get to share with others. And so what are some ways that someone like myself or anyone can have that same shift? And for all of the leaders that are here on the call or listening to the podcast, like what are some practical ways that they can start to enable that shift to happen for them as well?
so I think what I'd invite you to do, or listeners to do, or anybody who is curious around this is to consider that there are three truths potentially that you might want to accept. And this is where it became the game changer for me, Katrina. Like, I went to coaching school, and when somebody said to me, "We believe these three things about you," I was so deeply impacted. And so the first was, we believe that you are fundamentally whole. You are not broken. You do not need to be fixed. You do not need to change in any way. You are already good enough. And so this principle of wholeness, um, I later learned to conceptualize it as like a sun. So each one of us is like the sun. We are always there. We are always shining. But there are going to be moments in our lives, and there are going to be moments in our lives when a cloud may actually block our access to that light. And we think we are the cloud. And so that shift for me into wholeness of, wait a second, I felt quite broken as a young person. I felt like I needed a lot of fixing. And maybe that's where the striving was coming from. But to say, perhaps I could consider that I've always been whole, but I couldn't tap into that wholeness because of my circumstances or because of these practices or beliefs. That is a place where I ask people to investigate, can they accept that identity shift?
Wow, that's huge because I'm also just thinking like for me, for example, to go from the mindset of I do feel like a lot of my identity over the past like 10 years has been through the lens of like how can I consistently improve myself, right? Like how can I be better, which is this like kind of mindset of fixing. And then what happens is, and I have shifted this a lot, but this resonates a lot like in my journey as well, is that energy translates to people as I'm also now trying to fix them. And
Mm.
that is like an energetic thing almost, even though it's unconscious, but it does have an energy attached to it. Where it's if I'm fixing myself and constantly improving, is that sending the message that now other people need fixing as well. Whereas it's really just that we are human, we are always evolving. There, we are the sun. There are all of these experiences that are going to come into our life and probably maybe shift who we are or evolve us in some way, but it doesn't change our core. And yeah, that's such a beautiful core truth, like you said, to really hold within you. And yeah, it's,
Could I react to what you
yeah,
just
yeah.
shared? I, I think one potential misinterpretation of
Hmm.
this might be for people who are like us, right? Coaches, therapists, trainers, we all are, many of us are in this pursuit of self. And there's an energetic difference between doing this as, like you mentioned, what is the next version of
Hmm.
me that wants to come out, right? So the second part of the statement of wholeness is you are fundamentally whole and simultaneously working toward a greater experience of your wholeness.
Wow. And that's the second truth.
That's like the expansion of it. And it gives us then the permission to say, I am whole, I am enough. And there are things that I want more of. I want more of this sort of core nature of me to come out.
Mm-hmm.
I want more of the special gifts that I have to come
Mm-hmm.
out. And that's different from I need to so the energetic difference between self-improvement as I'm not good enough and self-improvement of I want to enhance the best me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that the and, right? Because we spoke about that a bit earlier where it's I am whole and I'm evolving into this next version, or and I want to expand in this way. Whereas if you were to place that with but, it would actually feel very limiting, where it's but got to fill this hole. And how does that translate to even now leaders and how they lead their teams? And you had mentioned earlier, like the deficit mindset or looking through different lenses or wearing different hats. Like, how can leaders, whether it's leading a team formally or even like a project or a company, leading in any way, how can they use these truths and how they show up for their team as well?
Is really important for people who are leading others or working in collaboration with other people and for ourselves actually. And the second is that we are fundamentally resourceful.
Mm,
We are capable of coming to our own solutions on how to take action in our lives.
mhm.
And combining the principles of wholeness and resourcefulness is a really powerful lens as a manager because it changes how I see you. If I see you as not resourceful, not capable on your own, and I need to fix you, boy, do I have a load of work in front of me,
Yeah.
right? I'm going to be doing so much teaching, training, guiding, doing for you, probably never delegating, micromanaging, all of these things because I'm holding this lens that you need me.
Mm-hmm.
When in reality, when we put on the lens of wholeness and resourcefulness, this could be to our partners and children too. You no longer need me, but we get to partner to bring out more of your professional
Mm-hmm.
wholeness. We get to partner to identify what is the next action you're going to take because I know your instincts are good and you're capable of recovering from mistakes. And that, I think, changes the relationship between leaders and those that they're supporting
Yeah.
and changes your own experience as a manager or a leader and can reduce that burnout too.
Yeah, definitely. And with any relationship really in your life, a friendship, a partner, a family member, that just, it's such a paradigm shift that changes the way that you experience yourself in the world, like you said. And what are some ways, like, how can people practically apply this? So, even if it's with a partner or with a team member, whoever it is, but how can we actually actively maybe shift in the moment our perspective? And what might that look like in practicality in the old paradigm of, oh, you must need my help or I need to fix this, or more coming from a deficit versus you are whole and there might be things that I need more of or want more of, or that sort of, because I think that when people come to you with a need, it can feel very like I'm just reading a book on the work of David Hawkins and the levels of consciousness, and he talks about power versus force. And I won't go so much into it, but the thing that really stands out to me is that when there's this dynamic of when somebody wants something from you, it makes you want to give it to them less. There's this like energy of
Mhm.
now you're taking away my choice because I no longer get to choose how I give it to you, but you're telling me I need to give this to you, otherwise there will be consequences, right? And I think in a relationship, whether it's a partnership or a leader, that dynamic can show up often. And what I'm hearing you say is, in the way that you're talking about wholeness and resourcefulness, like to me, that sounds like a remedy to what I had just shared about power and force. And so I'm curious, yeah, how we can really shift into that perspective.
So, first, there's a story. When I was buying my first laptop in college, I walked into Best Buy and I knew that I needed a laptop that could allow me to do my schoolwork, to connect to the internet. I knew the things that I needed this product to have. And as soon as somebody walked in and was like, "Can I help you find something?" I said, "Oh God," and I left because I didn't want to be sold to. I was so afraid that someone was going to sell me a laptop.
Yeah.
And there's a difference. And I think there's a relationship here between being sold a laptop and being pointed to what I was looking for.
Wow.
One meets their need of sales quotas, helping, and the other meets my need of, I need these things, I want these things. Can you point me to where I can locate them? And I've always felt that way about sales. I never want to be sold to, but I certainly am happy to buy something that aligns with what I need.
Mhm.
So that's a little story on the other end. So practically,
So much sense about why I avoid like every salesperson, but then there are people who do it really well in the way that you're mentioning, where it's let me meet your needs, let me be of service, let me be resourceful, let me be a resource for you, versus yeah, being sold to where it just feels like it's for them and not really for you. Like it's convincing. Yeah, I love that
right.
that story.
And I think there's so many parallels, and this sort of connection is really coming up in this moment for me. When somebody's selling you something, they're often telling you how good it is. They're like, "Oh my gosh, you should get this." They're giving advice. They're like giving all the specs. They're rationalizing, "You're going to love this. You're a college student. Don't you like to do at this is the early 2000s, like you can edit your own movies." I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm not going to do that." But instead of asking me the questions, "Hi, is there something that you're looking for today? What would you be using it for? How important is that thing to you? How much do you think you'd be using it? Oh, based on what you said, here's a couple of options." So if we play that out a little bit farther into a relationship or a work partnership, there is a difference between pushing, which is telling somebody how to do something or giving them knowledge or skills, and pulling. And the pulling is raising their awareness, reflecting back what they care about, asking powerful questions. And when you are using or applying the lens of wholeness or resourcefulness, you naturally are more curious and less attached to giving your opinion and giving your mentorship and advice, and really drawing out and trusting the other person. So you'll see more questions, you'll see more pauses, and you'll see, again, that sort of shift in energy from urgency to impart something on you, force to you, to be making something to be powerful with somebody.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like the fourth one, even like going back to your story, it's convincing this is definitely the thing that you need. And here's why it's better than all of these other things and why you shouldn't like these things. It also is in this energy of very much separate. Yeah, this is why this is bad and this is why this is good, versus there's no real bad or good. It's what is, and I think that's such a shift too, because and I understand it can be difficult. I would imagine in leadership or even partner, like really anything in life, like sometimes we're in a rush and we're busy, and it can be, I think sometimes there's this idea that it takes more time to be curious than it does to just tell or direct. And I think especially in the impact field too, right? Like people are they're very connected to that mission, and that drives them forward, and that's beautiful. And at the same time, I often see that the time piece comes up. I don't have enough time to give more space. I don't have enough time to be more curious. I don't have enough time. How does this play a role in the methodologies and practices that you support people with? And is it a mindset thing, or is it like just not having the tools? Like what can help people really move past that so that they can allow people to be more resourceful and see them as whole and be supportive versus directing, telling, pushing?
Part of me that wants to answer the question from like a systemic systems of oppression, right? Unfortunately, in this country, philanthropy and charity, in terms of how we help people, is embedded with white supremacy culture of urgency and the sense of people need us. And actually, sometimes, not all the time, we're actually applying that same deficit mentality of lack of resourcefulness, lack of wholeness onto the people we're serving. If we don't give them this, they won't have it. And materially, that is likely true. However, we can get wrapped up in the sort of the importance of us in the equation and less on the people we're serving. So, more to go down that line later. When we talk about a manager who says, I don't have time, the house is on fire and I need to just tell them what to do, I often ask, what would your experience be like day to day if you didn't feel this sense of urgency and overwhelm? How would that change the way you lead? And how would that change things for this organization? Often that's the times people sit back and they take a breath and they say, I've never even thought about what could be possible if we had the luxury to slow down. And then I invite people to consider how much of their time they're out there directing traffic and putting out fires when there is talent and treasure and resource right there on your team waiting to come out. Not for people to do more, right? Give more hours, but actually step into what they were really wanting to do in this world. And that usually brings up, oh, but I'm afraid of delegating because I'm the only one that can do it right. I'm the only one who can write the grant. I'm the only one who can talk to the board or the donors. I'm the only one. Then we've landed on a mindset that's keeping you from creating space in your life so that you can be the savior.
Wow. Yeah, then you get to the inner reality. And it's like, I love the first question because it's, is this actual urgency or perceived urgency that's like self inflicted or, this sense of pressure? And then the second piece is, okay, once you realize that removing the overwhelm, removing that urgency and what that feels like, you get to that true unconscious loop that's actually just keeping you in the same place that you're in. That is super powerful. And again, going back to your first point, it's about that worthiness, right? Attaching the worthiness to nobody right now can write a grant as well as I can, right? It's that sense of that's where I get my worthiness. And I would imagine that third step even is once you realize that core of, oh, it's really because I'm not comfortable delegating or I have these stories that I do it best. What's the next step then to really clearing that and shifting? Because that's now the unconscious is now conscious, right? How do we then shift into the conscious loop? And what does that look like?
So once that insight is there and the awareness and the consciousness is there, now you can take aligned action. Now we tap into your resourcefulness to trust. Okay, now that you know that, Now that you know that you've been making decisions in this way or from this place, taking myself as an example, now that we know that the reason you speak up so much is because you want to be acknowledged as having made it, consider that you're already there. How do you want to show up now? And you create that new reality. It's like a whole new floor from which to build upon.
Yeah. And it's shifting the perspective from me, I need to feel like worthy, I'm the best person for this, to, yeah, I am great and whole. And now I get to help other people be great and whole and build a team that can do that because they inherently are also whole and worthy of that same thing. And I think a lot, like the shift there for me too that I'm experiencing is looking for that recognition for I, to now you're getting the recognition for insourcing, hopefully, that recognition for your ability to now inspire and lead other people to carry that forth and have that trust and have that relationship with others where that's going to shift everything. Like that's, yeah, going back to, you said something earlier where it just shifted your perspective, how other people saw you, how you showed up, like your voice changed, because also there's not that sense of survival, urgency, action. Like I think we tend to, experience this in myself and I see this with others, where it's like I can be really confident in my direction sometimes, and there's this like sense of urgency, and I have to check in with myself, is that actually aligned action, or is it like perceived urgency and like survival mode action where it's, I feel like this is the only way, versus is this truly aligned, which is a key difference.
And as I'm playing out this fictitious scenario in my head of some nonprofit executive director who's putting out fires and telling you do this and you do that and very overwhelmed, and the organization is on fire and nothing is working, and they realize that some of the practices that they're doing is coming from that need inside, and they get that need met through some good coaching, through some good therapy, through some partnership with some other person or their own inner work. What kind of energy does that free up to focus on the things that you're truly needed for in your role? So an executive director may shift their attention, their urgency, their focus from telling everyone what to do to actually saying, wait a second, maybe I can go back to our funders and renegotiate. And maybe I can go back to our funders and ask for some budget adjustments for staffing, and I can be more creative. And one of the hallmarks that shift has occurred in a person is when they start to exhibit qualities related to these 8 words. Now, I might not remember all 8, but creativity, calm, clarity, courage, connectedness, confidence. All of these, once you start to see like themes and synonyms of that, you realize somebody's acting from that place of wholeness already and not from that cloud, if you will,
Yeah.
that part of them that was driving them before.
Yeah, absolutely. And such a way to check in with ourselves too, right? Do I feel in my body that I am calm, clear, creative? I think that's a big one, right? Like when we're in survival, I know when I'm in survival and overwhelm, I think I'm creative, but I'm not. And I've really noticed that a lot this week. It's so much more of my creativity is coming out and I'm so inspired. And I can only have that awareness now, being in this state of being that is fundamentally different from like my state last week, right? But last week I wouldn't have had the ability to pinpoint that I wasn't being creative because I was in that sense of overwhelm. And so what are some ways that leaders can maybe also check in with themselves and feel into, am I really truly calm, creative, and showing up my best? Or am I maybe in more of an overwhelmed survival state? How do I recognize that? And what's the the first step is probably recognizing it, and then it already begins to shift. But what would you say to people that are maybe in that struggle right now, where they feel like they can't let go of certain things and they are very much maybe getting their worthiness from some of the things that they're doing now, and getting them to think about what is possible with surrendering that, like you mentioned earlier as well, like without that urgency, like what's possible if I did have this extra time that I wasn't doing these things? How does that actually, how do people now use that time differently and that energy differently so that you don't go into that same pattern again, right? It's just like transferring the lens. Okay, urgency from here, going to transfer it to here, right? You want to really step out of that energy of urgency and survival, shift it within you, recognize it within you, and then there's taking those practical steps to really be different in how you show up.
The first thing that I would recommend anybody do is to put a calendar invitation for a meeting with themselves. So every Monday morning, most Monday mornings, I have my calendar blocked for a meeting with myself. And this is really important. This is not a meeting where I'm looking at my to-do list. This is not a meeting where I'm even at my computer, or this is a place and time where and I encourage all leaders to do this, look inward. What is coming up for me right now? What am I noticing in my body that I need to check into? So urgency often shows up in that short breath, right? We may experience, or I know I experience, the sense of heaviness if I'm feeling out of alignment with my wholeness or resourcefulness. I may notice that I don't have access to clear thinking. So first check in, make it a priority to take an intentional check in with yourself. The second part of that, though, is to do the thing that actually brings out more of your best self. So for me, I love coffee shops. I'm not a coffee expert, but I am a coffee shop expert. I love how they feel. I love the sounds. I love the smells. I love people watching. And when I am out of alignment with that sense of wholeness or resourcefulness or self, I go do the thing that gives that to me. I go get a coffee, I take a walk. And the thing that's so important here is young people know how to do this naturally. They dance, they sing, they play. So, what is the thing that reinvigorates you? Do that thing. So, a meeting with yourself is one, taking stock and then taking action to actually tap back into that feeling. So, that's what I would recommend as a really important process. And then you move into sort of tinkering with the rest of your work, but really protecting that check-in time for yourself and taking that action can shift how other people experience you and how you experience you the rest of the week. And so I recommend it for Mondays if you can. And there's something else that I found after these check-ins with myself, that you can pick one of those C words that you really connect to. And for me personally, it's connection. And so I put a practice in my calendar as a leader following Mondays that on Tuesdays, I connect with people.
That's how we connected.
I block my calendar.
I'm like, that was like,
Yeah,
we
exactly.
connected with that in action. Like through committing to that and showing up in that way and prioritizing that, which starts from prioritizing you, which I love because I think it's the first thing that goes. I can't even count how many times I've put like time for me on the calendar and it's the first that goes. And now I prioritize it because I really see the difference. But I think especially impact leaders, like that's often the first that goes. So I appreciate that. And I just wanted to share with the audience that this is like the real life manifestation of you committing to one of the C's, which is connection on Tuesdays.
Yeah, no, thank you for reminding me about that because I forgot. And I got an email today from somebody called Tuesdays Are for Connection. And she said, Jennifer, I know you connect with people on Tuesdays, and I've been thinking of you, and we should find some time.
Wow. I love that.
So you're not only manifesting it for yourself, but you're helping people bring more of what you want in your life.
By showing up in ways you invite other people to do the same. And I think that's the beauty of what you have done with the Connection Tuesdays. You invite other people then to both connect with you and then also to realize how they can connect with others. I'm now inspired to make that a commitment to myself as well because I love connecting and it is something that I do, but I don't have a practice around it. And I love this idea of actually bringing one of the C's or multiple of the C's, however many, to life through an actual practice.
Yeah. It's a shortcut right back into that sun, that light.
Yeah.
And for some people, it could be prayer, it could be cooking, it could be anything that brings out that sense of aliveness in you.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I appreciate you making that more concrete for people.
I appreciate everything that you've shared. I've learned so much about you and about myself, and also just practical ways of what this looks like, even, and ways that leaders can implement this. So I'm really grateful for everything that you've shared. I almost want to have a part two to go deeper into. I was really curious about what you shared about systems of oppression. Like I am both curious about that, and I think it's really important to start unpacking that and understanding those dynamics at play. So maybe we do a part two. But I'm just super grateful for you. I want to ask if you have anything that you maybe didn't get to share that you really wanted to share with the audience, and also how people can stay in touch with you as well. And I'll make sure to leave anything in the show notes for people.
Yeah. First, I just want to appreciate and acknowledge you. And I think what you're doing here in having these conversations with people and sharing this out in the world is really inviting more wholeness and more experience of that wholeness and resourcefulness in the world. So I just want to appreciate and acknowledge the impact that you're making. And I think what I would just add at the end here is impact. The word is ultimately about a felt experience, right? We talked about the impact of. And so, whether it's you or me or somebody listening and we're questioning that impact, we can just invite ourselves and others to ask, have you ever felt something as a result of being together? Because that is impact. And we often want to go for the big grand thing, but I just want to invite us to remember that impact is made in the tiniest moments every single day. It's the way you greet somebody. It's the way you look at somebody in their eyes when they are feeling like they need to be seen. That's impact too. So I want to put that word into perspective for us.
Wow. I'm gonna use an Exchangeify language, but you just gave me such a gift because I'm actually realizing now that I'm gonna say that this is true for me, and I would imagine maybe other people are confusing these two things as well. But I think we confuse impact and outcome, because impact is those, like you said, moments of impact. Like, how are we impacting our experience, somebody else's experience? Like, impact is happening all the time. And I think when we have a strong mission and we feel like we're on this like drive and urgency for that mission, it's more of we're looking for that outcome. Like, once that it happens, then I'll be okay, then I'll be happy, then I'll feel successful. And there's millions of impact moments along the way. And that shift for me that you just shared is, yeah, like fundamentally changing my perspective on impact. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. And Jennifer, how can people stay in touch with you? What's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah. So I'm most active on LinkedIn, Jennifer McDowell, probably one of many, but it's LinkedIn and then the little / coach Jennifer McDowell.
Amazing.
And my website is commongoodcoaching.com. And other than that, send me a note. Let's get on the schedule for Tuesdays connecting. And I think that when we recognize that sometimes an ask of somebody can be a gift to them. So I just invite people if they want to connect. That's actually a gift to me. It's not an ask of me.
Wow.
So it'd be my honor to connect with anybody.
That it's a gift. And I want to turn up the mic on that a little bit, because I think oftentimes I've heard in coaching, especially from independent contributors or people more early in their career, they're more nervous to put time on somebody's calendar or to reach out and ask for something, or even just to connect, because they feel like it's taking away from them. What you just said, I think, is super important, in that it is not taking away from. It is a gift. It's up to each person to decide if they're able to give that, if they have the time for that. But it is inherently a gift. So just wanting people to remember that next time that they do reach out to someone, and encouraging people to reach out to you as well. So thank you. Like what you heard and want more? Stay connected with our community on social media using the links below. Like us on your favorite podcast provider, and sign up for the Conscious Loop newsletter, where we only send you goodies with one intent: to break your unconscious loops. If you have an unconscious loop you want to break free from, let us know so we can feature that loop on the show. Info and show notes, and we'll see you next time in the Conscious Loop.